when I hear this debate of thinking a private school automatically means you'll do better, I have to disagree, because I never went to a private school and I couldn't have done any better for myself, and I was really proud of how I did.
Welcome to Tanya Morris. Hi, Tanya. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
I'm very happy to meet you. You've been here for 1 year in Cambridge already, but that's the first time we connect. You're not at my college, and I've only been lecturing via recordings, so I haven't seen you in person yet. But I came across you because I saw something on the website of the computer laboratory where you featured in July on a page that said, the page started with an enticing title of "State School Proud to be Here." That sounded interesting. And then he went on saying very interesting things that resonated very much with the kind of stuff I've been doing over the summer on this channel. So you seem to want to debunk some myths about Cambridge. Can you tell us more about that?
So I was initially reached out to because I run a Twitter, which is at camtweetcompsc, and it aims to kind of talk about what it's like to be at Cambridge, tips to apply, trying to get across that we are normal people and that you don't have to be kind of programming since you were 2 years old or have been studying crazy maths from a really young age, and you can just be like a normal average student. But if you work really hard and get good grades, then you would fit in here. And it's just trying to get that across, that you can just be a normal person, whereas there is this misconception that everyone comes from private school, everyone's been studying to enter Cambridge since they were like just born, when that's really not true. And when you get here, you'll realize that, and that's what I'm trying to get across on the Twitter.
Yeah, so I'm intrigued by a number of things, and in particular this business of the expensive schools, right? So not everywhere is the same as in Britain. And for example, I didn't go to an expensive school. I went when I was a teenager to what I thought was a pretty good school, but the fees that my parents paid were like £0 per year. It was what you would call here a state school, I suppose. And all the people I knew were like that. So it was fairly uncommon to go to a school where you had to pay fees. Now, there seemed to be a big deal here about fee-paying schools and private schools. And also there's confusing thing that the public schools actually mean private school or something like that, which I don't quite understand. Would you help the international audience, in which I put myself in that as well? Would you help us understand better how the system is here, and why is it that the state schools are considered second rate?
So private schools are the ones which are fee paying. Your parents will pay per term, and they're known for having kind of better facilities, which I guess you'd expect. If you're paying, you're going to expect top of the range. And then there's state schools where you don't pay, which is what I went to. And then within state schools, there's grammar schools where I come from, you would have to pass the 11+ exam at the end of primary school, and then you could go on to a grammar school, which is just meant to be more academic, but still you don't pay, that's free. But I actually failed the 11 plus when I was in year 6. So I went to just a comprehensive school, which is just run of the mill. No admissions test or anything. They'll just let anyone in. And again, non-fee paying. But yeah, I wouldn't change my experience. You hear a lot of different things of like, maybe some schools do have better facilities than what I had, but I equally did really well. I got 4 A stars at A level at just a comprehensive non-grammar. So when I hear this debate of thinking a private school automatically means you'll do better, I have to disagree, because I never went to a private school and I couldn't have done any better for myself, and I was really proud of how I did.
Yeah, so are the exams taken nationally, or are they taken in the school? Is it the case that the one school gives you an easier route into the exams, or is this completely irrelevant?
So to get like into the grammar school, the 11 plus I think is done by borough. So that's the one that I failed and then ended up at my comprehensive one. But then in terms of like GCSEs and A levels, you're all going to be sitting the same exact exam. I guess it's just whether they prepare you differently, or like if they've had teachers come from better universities teaching you and things like that. But other than that, like I think a lot of how you do it is down to the person as an individual, not necessarily what school you've been to, the different facilities. I think if you're determined, then that's all you really need.
Do the expensive schools have some special extra coaching for people who want to go to Cambridge or something like that?
From what I've heard, yes. A lot of them have either teachers that actually have been to Oxford or Cambridge, so therefore have the experience of knowing what it's like to apply. Whereas at my school, none of the teachers had been to Oxford or Cambridge or a lot of the top universities, so they didn't know how to help me. They tried to help me, but they didn't know exactly what you needed in the personal statement. They didn't know anything about the different admissions tests. Whereas when I spoke to my friends which do have been to private school, they'll have actual people just for helping Oxbridge applications at some schools, whereas that just seems such a far reach from, I was just going around different teachers and saying, could you read my personal statement and give me some tips? But there was so much conflicting advice about like things like extracurriculars, people saying I should include if I had a job, any like sports, and trying to get extra things like that, when some unis really like that, but for Cambridge and Oxford, I know it's more about the super curriculars, reading, and although sports, music is good, that's not where I should have been trying to spend my time. I should have been reading up and learning more interesting things.
Well, it's really helpful. Thank you very much. And from your experience, obviously you did very well, and the teachers who hadn't gone to Cambridge themselves but helped you did very well for you too. So what advice would you give to people who were in your situation?
So I would say that you will have to take a lot of self-initiative and do maybe a lot more work outside of school than maybe some other people who are not applying to Oxbridge. Things like extra reading, that's easy enough to do. You can go to the library, you don't even have to pay for the books or find PDFs online. Logic puzzles, I used to do loads of those. I used to ask teachers to sit and do them with me, things like that. And like if you're friends with your teachers, even if they're not that sure what they're doing, they'll try to help you. We used to do like mock interviews and stuff, and I've got to say they were nothing like the real thing, because they just didn't know, but they were trying to help. And like all preparation is good preparation is the way I see it. And just also researching online, like the Twitter that I run, other outreach resources, the colleges release guides on things like that. So just find all the information you can, is what I would recommend.
What advice do you have for people like me who would be really keen to have more people like you and not have people like you be deterred because they didn't go to the expensive school? I don't really give a damn if someone came from an expensive school or from a non-fee paying school. All I care is that they're passionate about the subject and they're actually good at it. So what advice do you have for me to encourage more people like you to say, well, just give it a go, because you're the kind of people we want?
I think that's a difficult question, because I think a lot of the reason people from state schools don't apply is because of the misconception of the fact that Oxbridge is going to be full of private school students. And also, people who have gone to private school are not scary. They're just normal people who happen to go to a fee-paying school. So I don't know why that puts people off. But yeah, it's difficult because until more people start applying and putting that thoughts aside, then the statistics are not going to change. So it is difficult. And I think the colleges are doing a good job at running like state school only events, things like that, just to make people feel included and think maybe actually this is an opportunity which could be for me. That was the key thing, that at first I was like, oh, I'm not sure this is for me. But like when I looked around, and Fitz, actually, which is where I go, my college, has a very high percentage of state school students, which is one of the things that I liked, because I felt like I might be at home there and fit in more, even though that might have not necessarily been the case. But when I was looking around, that was something I looked for, although I'm sure that any colleges would have made you feel welcome at home.
So did Fitzwilliam run an event especially for state school that you did attend?
I went to a Women in STEM one at Murray Edwards next door, which I'm pretty sure was state school only. And then obviously I saw Fitzwilliam kind of over the gate and was like, that looks like a really cool college. It's very modern. But their stats, I think it's over 60% a state school, I think off the top of my head, which I was like, maybe that means I would fit in there and like there'll be people like me. Even though, again, I think that came from the misconception that I wouldn't be like people who went to private school, when really like at uni, you realize that everyone is quite similar. It's just that you've just had different educational backgrounds.
Mm-hmm. And now that you've been running this Twitter channel for a year now, since you joined Cambridge?
I took over it, I think, at the end of first term. I actually used to follow it before I arrived, and then they passed it over. Yeah, so the person who was running it before gave it up. They might have finished their degree here, and I applied to run it, and they let me have the job. But I actually used to follow it, so I was excited to be able to do that.
Right. So explain to me how this works. Are you broadcasting wisdom to the world, or are you answering individual queries, or both?
So it's a mix of both. I have an app called Curious Cat, which you can get through the Twitter, where people ask like anonymous questions if they don't want their name to be linked to them. Things like helping with admissions, or just tips, or just what Cambridge is like, the student loan, just student life. And also I just kind of tweet about my daily life, like when I'm at uni, like my supervision work, stuff like that, how many hours I work in a day, what I'm up to, and also like the side of uni of like going out with friends and not working, which I think is what people think people at Cambridge do not do. They think it's study 24/7, which isn't true.
So how many hours do you work in a day, or in a week more like?
It varies quite a lot, I would say. When I'm busy, I usually would start work at like 9, but then I wouldn't work anything past like 8 p.m. at night because I'm very much a morning person. But obviously I'd have a lot of breaks in the day, or like go out for lunch and things like that. But I was quite strict in that. I had like a starting time and an end time, and I wouldn't go past that because I think that's when it gets a bit unhealthy.
But you're now starting your second year, so all your first year has been in kind of lockdown condition. Have you always been at home, or were you in Cambridge for your first term, or how did it work?
Yeah, I was in college for my first term, and then I actually chose to stay at home for both my second and third term. So I did all my exams online from home, just because I was lucky I had a good working environment at home. And it wasn't the real Cambridge experience, kind of being locked down and worrying about COVID. So I just stayed at home. But I am going back to college this year, hoping for some more in-person interaction and lectures, hopefully.
Well, we on the teaching side are very sorry for what happened, which of course is nobody can be blamed for it, but we are sorry that you didn't get the full experience that you deserve for having been admitted to Cambridge, because you still get the lectures from me through other media, but the real experience is the interaction with all your other students, your peers. They're just a big part of this good stuff, because all this all these clever people like you are in the same class now, but they will branch out in many directions in a few years' time. And also, the good thing about the Cambridge system is that you don't only get to meet the people in your subject, like it was when I went to university, but through the college system, you meet people in many other subjects. And so if you have a chance to socialize with them, which you haven't had during COVID lockdown, then these are friends in all directions of society that it will be great to have when you're 30, 40, 50, 60, and so on. So yeah, I really look forward to Cambridge becoming what it normally is, and you being able to experience that as well. But yes, you were saying that when you were preparing for Cambridge, you didn't know what was the sensible thing to put in your application statement, for example. Did you get any useful tips from this Twitter account, for example?
I did used to follow the Twitter, and there was kind of like, I read that super curriculars are what is important for Oxbridge, reading, extra reading, coding, stuff like that. So I tried to focus a lot of my personal statement on what I had done around the subject, things like learning C and C++ in my spare time, just bits like that. Whereas at school, I was being told that I should try to take up a sport or an instrument and get like extracurriculars. Whereas I knew that one wouldn't interest me, and two wasn't what necessarily Oxbridge were looking for. They were looking for me to show that I was academic and capable that way. And obviously it's amazing people who can do sports and instruments and things, but it's not the most important thing. Whereas I was told like, oh no, it looks like you only work, you should try to add something else in. But I was like, that's good, that shows that I'm academic.
So I think many people overthink the personal statement a bit too much. I mean, ultimately it's not really the main thing that gets you in or not. It's your what you produced, your results is what gets you in. And then once you get to the interview stage, it's how you behave when you face a problem you haven't seen before. That's what we want to see. How do you reason? Are you someone who can, make new connections between things? Are you someone who can, when they get stuck, take a small hint and turn it into something useful? That's what we value. And it's okay. Well, a personal statement, you have to write a personal statement. People make it such a big deal. It's not that much of a big deal, really. So I mean, as you know now that you are in. So at what stage before deciding to write that personal statement did you figure out that computer science was the thing you wanted to study at university?
So I first took computer science at GCSE, and I kind of took it by chance. I was given the option of PE, art, psychology, or computer science, and then I just ruled out PE and art. And I knew psychology would be interesting, but also everyone wanted to take it. I went to an all-girls school, so there were not many people who wanted to take computer science, but I liked tech and I was logical and I liked maths, so it seemed like a sensible choice. So I took it for GCSE. I was like one of the only people in the class that actually enjoyed the lessons. A lot of people thought it was for boys and just didn't like it, so didn't want to focus on it. And then I got a 9 at GCSE, and then I was like, this would be a sensible career choice, because it opens a lot of doors. It's not just coding, that's the biggest thing. I tell people I'm studying computer science and they're like, oh, so you want to just do coding? But it's so much more than that. It gives you like logical skills, maths, like analytical skills. So I knew that it would give me a broad option of choices for when I do leave university. And then, yeah, I took A-level and I knew that I wanted to do a degree probably by year 12. But then I decided I wanted to try to apply to Cambridge the summer of year 12. When I did my maths A-level early, which my school didn't normally support. So I used to just go to year 12 and year 13 lessons and just try to kind of muddle my way through. My first A-level maths lesson was actually a year 13 lesson. So I hadn't done any of the AS content. So I was just trying to catch up. And I got an A star and I got higher than the year 13s who I took it alongside. And then I thought maybe Cambridge actually could be an option. I was like, maybe I am smarter than I think. and I could apply there. So then I started preparing for like admissions tests, things like that, and mentally preparing to apply there.
Very good. So some of the things you said give me hints or hooks for asking questions I usually ask in these interviews, as you may have seen from other people. For example, you said you went to an all-girls school and nobody was doing computer science. Now, this is still a very male-dominated field, which we are trying to change by initiatives such as your Twitter account and this interview. How did you deal with the fact that there were so few? I mean, that there are. I mean, once you got here to Cambridge, you still saw the girls were in a small minority. How did you deal with that, and what would you find most helpful in coping with that problem of being in a minority, if it was a problem for you?
So it was definitely strange coming from the all-girls school and then suddenly going, well, virtually into lectures and things, and realizing that you are very much in the minority being females, and I'd been used to being just surrounded by other women. So it was strange. In a way, I just tried to not let it bother me. I'm friends with a lot of the girls on the course, just because naturally I think we kind of gravitated together. And yeah, I don't think it's that big of an issue. I get that people are put off by it, but at the end of the day, it's not going to change if more women don't take that leap and apply for computer science. How can we get more women if women are choosing not to apply? So it is difficult, and I hope that, like, by kind of breaking down the stigmas, that more women would like to apply, or even just try it out at like GCSE or A level. I think so many people are put off early on, and then they just completely rule it out as an option for later life, when it's actually a very like rewarding and good field to be in.
Yeah, I think this thing that you even said in that text interview on the Computer Lab page, which I found you through, was one of the things that drew me most to wanting to speak with you in person, where you said, I'd like to see more women here, but we are not going to have more female students unless we have more female applicants. That's absolutely spot on from the viewpoint of someone who does the application selections, because it's not like, you know, we get women and we reject them in favor of men. It's that there aren't that many to choose from, because the proportion of women in the applicants is already tiny. So therefore, you can't expect much more at the outside end of the funnel. So you said that if you actually go for it, you then find it's very enjoyable. Why is it enjoyable for you? Why is computing so good, so fun, so rewarding?
I think because it's not just one thing. It incorporates so many things that I like. I studied philosophy and ethics for A level, and I really enjoyed it. I only studied that purely because I thought I would enjoy it. It didn't really match the rest of my choices hugely, but like the ethics of computer science, I find really interesting. And I think studying philosophy kind of gave me a broader way of thinking, which again is helpful thinking about like human-computer interaction, things like how the users will think. So I think it incorporates psychology, sociology, economics, business. It's literally a bit of everything, but all in one kind of neat field. So it gives you so many options of what you could go on to do with your degree as well, which is what leads me to want to keep pursuing it. And then I'm not sure what job I want to do afterwards, but I know that a lot of doors will be open for me.
You're absolutely right about that. I can guarantee you will never be unemployed after you get a computer science degree from here. Now, another thing that attracted me, particularly in your textual interview, was you said, I had always thought I'd want a job in computer security, which is my field. But I liked how human-computer interaction also involves a lot of psychology and interacting with people. I think I might like to do something in that area in the future. Now, I've had a rather successful academic career and equally successful startup and business by working on security and also the human side, human aspect of security. And I'll be teaching you security this year. So I hope that I can entice you to span both of these subjects, because in security, which was your original interest from what you say, there's plenty of stuff that is very nitty-gritty, technical, talk to the machine. But there's also plenty of stuff where the real deal is talking to the human beings who use the system, because it's all, there's the machines, they do stuff, they can be tricked into doing something else, and the machines are part of a bigger thing where there's also the people who use the machines, and maybe they don't understand what the machines do, and they can also be tricked to do something else. And the security is the security of the whole thing, and you can poke holes into any part of it, including especially where two things that are different connect to each other, for example, the people and the machines. And so there's plenty of interesting psychology work to be usefully done in security. So I'm curious, and I want to hear from you, what is it that attracted you to security in the first place?
I think just because it's such a real life issue, and I know a lot of computer science obviously is real life, but you kind of see it in the news and things. And I was particularly interested in encryption kind of throughout my A-levels. I did my A-level project on different ciphers over a network, and I did like a dumbed down version of RSA with much smaller numbers.
Oh, wow.
And I did a Trifid cipher, which is a more unusual one, and like Burnham and things like that. So I was really interested in that. And then the HCI, I kind of failed from first year, but I do appreciate there's obviously a massive crossover there. So I do think that that's probably one of my, at the moment, top kind of fields I'd like to work in, like the security side of things, but the more user focused end of that, because it would be different all the time, and I know I'd enjoy it.
Oh, that's really cool. Well, I hope to see more of you then. Maybe do finally a project or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have to say yes just because I'm interviewing you and you're on camera or something like that. But seriously, I think there's plenty of interesting stuff to do there. And if you share that interest, then maybe we'll meet again
Yeah.
on that. Now, because you're such a keen observer of the environment and the imbalances and so on, what are your comments about this stereotypical image that the computer person is always some kind of male nerd with a hoodie and so on? Is this an accurate thing? Is this just a narrow thing, or just what do you think about it?
So in short, I would say that's not accurate at all. There's so many different types of people studying computer science, which I had only been exposed to. There were 3 people in my A-level course, so I hadn't met a wide range of people studying this. So when I came to uni, I realized that there's a massive different group of people. You do get some people who are more reserved and quiet and kind of like sit on their own program, which I guess is the like stereotypical image that people have. But it's the same as anything else. There's all different kinds of people. And I think that within computer science, there's so many different roles that do require these different kinds of people. Like I want to do something more user-centered, so I have like the social skills and that side of things. But then equally, we do need people like people who are more reserved, who might prefer to sit and program, would be very well suited to a different role. So I think whatever type of person you are, there is something within computer science that would be for you.
You had experience of 1 term physically in Cambridge. What was your experience of computing at Cambridge during that term when you were not alone in your own bedroom at home? What did you find great about being here? What did you find difficult, if anything?
So it was great to actually be with people, and like we got to do hardware labs where you actually met some other computer scientists from different colleges, it was just cool to actually be able to talk to other people who you see their name online, but you never actually got to talk to them before. I would say one thing that can be challenging about the Cambridge course, depending on how you look at it, is how broad the course is. Because like, for example, computer graphics just isn't hugely my thing. So I found that course quite intense in first term just because I didn't enjoy it. So it felt like harder work. But in a way, that's a positive because I get to explore everything before deciding actually what I want to specialize in further down, like in 3rd year. So I guess in a way that you can take that as a negative, but also it's probably more of a positive.
Yes, well, in the first year, we make you do things, and whatever you like, we don't care. You're going to do this, this, and this. And then in 2nd year, and even more so in the 3rd year, you get to choose a bit more. By the time you come to the 3rd year, you can be doing something completely different to the person sitting next to you, going to almost totally different courses, and each course is quite intense. But in the first year, instead, you have to have a broad base that allows you to continue into every direction. Even the things that you're not going to continue, you're still going to have to study a bit of. And in some of these things, you will see that some other people are much quicker than you on that. Did that scare you? Did that put you off? Was there a feeling of competition?
I would say that particularly like the programming side of things, I only had been taught Python at school, and I'd only really been taught to the level that I needed to know. And I hadn't done loads outside of school. I'd self-taught a little bit of C and C++, but that was about it. And then you meet people who can like code very fluently in like 3 or 4 languages, and that can be extremely intimidating. And you can feel like I don't know how I got here, like this was a big mistake, which I guess links to imposter syndrome, which is very commonly talked about here. And I would say that in my first term, that was quite a big thing for me, feeling like it was a mistake that I'd been let in here and I could not compete with all these crazy smart people. But actually, I think you'll find that the people who are very smart and are quite loud about it, equally, there's going to be a lot of people like you who are thinking, oh my goodness, like I can't compete, but you're actually in the majority and you're just hearing people say the best parts about themselves when they probably have topics they struggle on. But obviously you don't tell everyone that, you tell everyone what you're good at. So I think you just have to try to focus on yourself as much as you can, which can be tricky, and like find other people who might feel exactly the same. And if we talk about it and realize that everyone's struggling on the same thing, it makes you feel a lot better.
Yes, I think that so many people have this insecurity feeling of being not as good as the rest, that if you just, if people knew more arithmetic, then they would understand it's impossible for everybody to be below average, right?
Yeah.
But maybe they don't hear the other people confess that they also have this fear of being below average, and then everybody thinks they're below average, whereas no, you're fine. And have you been able to use the strategy you described, talking with other people who are willing to open up to you in this environment, especially in the 2 terms where you were not physically in Cambridge?
Yeah, so I spoke to some other people and then realized we were actually feeling the exact same thing. And it's like, well, we can't have both accidentally got in, so that's clearly false. And also I think if you think logically about it, which is obviously what the degree is all about, the admissions tutors who let you in are not stupid. They're not going to have let you on the course if there's someone better out there that they could have taken instead. So you've got to think like the interview must have gone well, the admissions test went well, I got the grades, so why shouldn't I be here? And just block out the silly thoughts that you might have about this all being a mistake, because clearly it's not. It would have been too much of a very low probability for you to have accidentally slipped through all of those nets and not been realized as being below average when you're clearly not, if you've passed all of those tick boxes so far.
You're absolutely right. And in the context of allowing people who don't match the stereotype of white boy, expensive school and so on, in order to allow those people to feel that they're entitled to apply, which they are, and we want more of them, what would you tell them about the imposter syndrome that they may be feeling about, my teacher says I could apply to Cambridge, but I don't really think I'm good enough for Cambridge. No, all these people are. What would you say to them?
See, I was in like a similar position once upon a time where people were like, wow, you're really smart, like you could actually apply. And I was like, no, it's like I got very good GCSEs, but I was like, no, I don't think that's worthy of Cambridge. When looking back now, I think I got 7 grade 9s, and back then I was like, no, that's not good enough for Cambridge, when that's just ridiculous, really. And I think as well, you have to remember that the worst that can happen is you get rejected and you go on to find another great university which will probably fit you really well. Nothing that bad is going to happen to you if you apply. It might just be a bit of extra reading preparing for interview, but that's good for you, so you're not going to be missing out on much. But yeah, you just have to take the leap, I think, and just think, what's the worst that can happen? And also, if you don't apply, you never know if you could have done it. And for me, I couldn't cope with not knowing what if I'd done this, what if I'd done that. So yeah, I think if you're considering it, just go for it.
Thank you very much. So if people have more questions, I mean, now the deadline for sending in the application is imminent, and could they write to this Twitter account you mentioned?
Yeah, they can follow me on Twitter to keep updated, and they can just tweet. If they at me in the tweet, I'll see it. Or there's a link in the bio to Curious Cat if people don't want to be identified to their questions. And I'm quite good at answering quite quickly. I am aware that the admissions deadline is very soon.
Right. Okay. So we'll exchange an email where you'll give me all the links you want me to put in the description of the video, and I'll stick them below.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tanya.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you want to share with our audience before we sign off?
The main thing I would say is just try not to be scared of everyone else and what other people are saying, and just focus on yourself and believe in yourself. And again, with the applying to Cambridge, other top universities, you just have to go for it and take the leap and not worry about who else is applying, things like that. Just focus purely on yourself. And yeah, good luck if people do apply.